Okay, so welcome to each and every one of you to my webinar tonight on Venus. Venus, planet of love, planet of relationship, very important planet. And as you can see, I am Pam Carruthers, and my aim is to help people navigate major life transitions gracefully using soul astrology and spiritual life coaching. And Venus, only this week, joined the Sun. And I've named it the sacred marriage of passion and purpose. Passion being Venus, purpose being the Sun. And it's in Gemini, hence the duality aspect of this conjunction. The masculine, the feminine, good and bad, right and wrong, all of those together. So Venus actually disappeared from the morning sky. It's been a morning star since last year. So it went invisible. Couldn't see it since April 30th, and that was at 1 degree of Taurus. So it's symbolic of the goddess, Venus, being in the underworld, the unconscious. And then Venus joined the Sun, which is the source of life, of course, all of us and our purpose, on June the 6th at 16 degrees of Gemini. Now, when Venus joins the Sun, it is this sacred marriage. It's the yin and the yang, and the passion of purpose. And Venus represents passion, beauty, what we love and what we value. Without Venus, our life would be very dull. And Venus is also connected to how we earn money, because our value, how much we place value on ourselves, is how much we receive. It's the feminine principle. So this relates totally to our abundance. So when it joins and combines with the Sun, it's also very creative. On July the 13th, it will become visible once more. And then Venus will rise as the evening star, and that exact degree will be 2 degrees of Leo. And then Venus will be transformed and empowered from her initiation with the Sun. And with hope, this bodes well for the rise of feminine power and leadership for the rest of this year, 2016, actually leading up until next year. I'll be giving you some dates later on. So Venus and the goddess is known as the gates of initiation. And this is a teaser. It's about the shamanic astrology principles that I'm discussing here. And I find them very, very intriguing and worth huge amounts of research, actually. Anyhow, we'll touch upon it now. So I'm going to talk about in this masterclass the Venus Shamanic Cycle and explain what that means. And of course, what the Venus and the Sun in Gemini conjunction was part of a very powerful configuration called a Grand Mutable Cross, right at the new moon as well. Very, very close together they were. And I'm going to tip a nice little thing about Aura-Soma, which of course I have studied, and the bottles at that exact degree, 16 degrees, 35 minutes, those two bottles, and what they signify, because they have a lovely little message for us. I'd also like to help you identify which of the shamanic overtone signs you're connected to. And this is before you were born, that cycle would have begun for you. And I'm also looking at a couple of charts of women, as it happens, in the news, Hillary Clinton and the tennis player with the undecipherable name, Maria, and both, of course, are very relevant because they're both in the headlines today. And looking at what we call the pre-birth Venus, Moon Venus charts, and they're very interesting because they can be an exact time, and they are a chart, and a chart can respond to transits and also show life purpose. So look forward to the end, because that's when I'll be looking at those. And also, it'd be nice if you had a pen and paper, because I'm going to show you later on a whole chart, a very detailed chart, so you can identify your Venus Shamanic cycle. And here, picture astronomy, of course, the stars. Venus is known as the diamond. She is the brightest star she's not a star according to your planet, but she's the brightest object in our night sky apart from the moon. And that's why I love it when Venus becomes an evening star, because that's when we can see her. We can't see her during the day, hidden by the light of the sun. And it orbits between the sun and the Earth. It's very close. Venus and Mercury are incredibly close to the sun. All the other planets go out beyond. So it's never more than 47 degrees from the sun in your chart. So it can only be in the same zodiac sign as the sun or the sign either side. And it's like the hand mirror of the sun, as seen in the symbol. Now, what's interesting, this picture I've had for a while, was Venus with the Pleiades on April the 2nd, 2012. And although Venus is in Western astrology, I have to get my words right, in this conjunction in Gemini, in the sidereal system, it's actually with Pleiades. It's actually in Taurus, the constellation of Taurus. So this picture is very relevant. It's actually showing you those stars, which are, if you look up in the sky, this again is something you can't see at this time, at the moment. At this time, it'll be in the winter. But the stars of Taurus have Orion. That's Orion. And the Pleiades, the top right, they're a cluster of stars. They're quite beautiful. But as I said, you can't see those in summer in the northern hemisphere because there are the same signs where the sun is, so the sun obliterates them in another winter. But they're there. It's conscious. Now, this is the orbit, just a little bit of astronomy to help you. It takes 225 days to orbit the sun. So this diagram, here's the sun, yellow in the middle, and then a little red dot is Mercury, whizzing very fast around. It's just been retrograde. I hope you might have noticed that in many ways. I've noticed it a lot. It's to do with communication. And here comes Venus, further away from Mercury, and then you see the blue dot is the Earth, and then the next planet out will be Mars. And Mars can be in any sign of the zodiac. And it's very important at this moment of time because Mars is retrograde, which only happens every 2 and a bit years. But that's not the focus of tonight's webinar. So anyhow, when Venus is viewed from Earth, this cycle is called a Synodic cycle. And what that means, from inferior conjunction with the sun, it takes 584 days, about 1.5 years. And this is because of the interreaction between Venus's cycle of 225 days and the 365 days orbital period of the Earth. Please don't ask me to explain that. That's an astronomical factor, and I'm not that hot on astronomy. But this cycle, what's happening now is Venus is at what we call her superior conjunction, and the inferior conjunction happened last year. Get more of that later. Now, when Venus is retrograde, which is what happened last year, she creates this extraordinary, beautiful pattern, this dance of beauty. And Venus will go retrograde every 40 to 43 days, every 18 months. And as I said, it happened last year, 2015. It went through the signs of Virgo and Leo, and then back to Virgo, and then forward again to Leo. And over a period of 8 years, 8 is Venus's cycle, by the way. When you're age 8, Venus is back where it was at your birth, and age 16, sweet 16, and every multiple of 8 in your life. So it's one fact. It's a very important fact to know. Anyhow, over a period of 8 years, these points in retrograde form this beautiful pattern, a pentacle. It's the 5-petal lotus, the spiral fractal. Venus is everywhere in nature and beauty. And in astrology, it's the circle of 360 degrees divided by 5, and that's called a quintile. It's 72 degrees. So you can look at your chart and see all those beautiful creative aspects. The thing in astrology is we get challenged by the squares, the oppositions, they create action. Often our gifts get overlooked. So the trines, the quintiles, the sextiles, and we'll call this. They're often, we just take them for granted, and you might not do anything with those. Quite worth taking. So the Synodic cycle and the Shamanic Overtone, these ideas are fascinating to me, and I hope for you as well. So it's the Shamanic cycle is the phase of a planet in relationship to the sun. When Venus is 10 degrees ahead of the sun, it's rising as a morning star, and that's called the heliacal rise. And shamanic astrology calls this Venus heliacal rise the Shamanic Overtone. Again, not to worry, if this means nothing to you, I will show you a chart later on. And it is meaningful, this, because the heliacal rising was considered a resurrection after darkness and the beginning of a new cycle. And the Sumerians, Babylonians, Mesoamericans, amongst many others, began the Venus cycle with this heliacal rise. Now that is not where we are now. We're halfway through the cycle. That's where it was last year. So here's a little diagram. And if you know your chart, you have your chart handy. I should have actually said that earlier to you. But it's really, really good to know which type you are. In other words, do you have Venus in your chart as a morning star or an evening star? This little diagram shows you. So all you need to look, everything goes clockwise. So here in this chart, Venus is ahead of the sun, a morning star. It's also called Lucifer, by the way, or the light bearer. If it's behind the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, so Venus will set after the sun. Therefore, it's an evening star. So it's going to be close, but it might not be this close in your chart. It's good to know that. So that's the heliacal rise, is when it becomes visible, and that was last year. It was August 22nd, and that was right at the beginning of Leo, 2 degrees of Leo. That's actually significant. That will come up later. And I just noticed that myself. Anyhow, this is called a tone in shamanic astrology. And this shamanic process relates both to the 7 chakras and to the myth of Inanna. Venus has just spent 260 days as a morning star and made 7 or 8 moon conjunctions. So now, at this time, from April, we are in the transitional phase when Venus prepares to be reborn as an evening star. Now I'm bringing up points, and I will elaborate as I go through the process of this webinar, so please listen to the end to understand it all. Now, Venus joins the sun. This is the symbolism of the goddess. Venus is the goddess in the underworld. And this is the myth that I know and love very much. It's the Sumerian myth of Inanna. Now, she's the queen of heaven. And in the picture, she's obviously on the left. And what's happening is she descends into the underworld to visit her sister, Ereshkigal, who's the image on the right. And she's gone to witness the funeral of Ereshkigal's husband. In one story, one myth, Ereshkigal is also pregnant. Anyhow, when she arrives, Ereshkigal is furious because she declares that the upper world goddess has to be treated by the laws of her kingdom, and that she be brought naked and bowed low. So what happens? The Queen of Heaven is stripped of her power and her vestments at 7 gates, and then she's killed. So what's happened? She's descended, she submits, and she dies. And she's sacrificing herself for deep feminine wisdom and atonement. So this symbolically is an initiation. It's a sacred process, and she's meeting the dark feminine, the shadow. who lives in the underworld. So this psychological process is very much concerned with Gemini as well as a sign. The two halves, the duality, the light and the dark, the goddess and the demon, or the dark side, the shadow. So Ereshkigal symbolizes also the destructive and also transformational mysteries of the underworld. I chose a tarot card last night in the Inner Child deck, and it talks all about going into the underworld and the labyrinths and that journey. And that is what all of us go through at some time in our life. When we are hidden, we are meant to be in this place where we are going through some deep transformation. So in this myth, those 7 gates represent the 7 chakras, and they occur when Venus joins the moon every month after she's visible, either as a morning star or an evening star. So Venus at the moment has disappeared, and this is quite a long time of Venus to disappear. She's reborn 60 or 90 days later. So that's the time which she's just done. She's met the sun, the source of life. So that is the whole underworld phase. Now, you might know, if you're very concerned, it's a wrong word, but if your chart is strongly Venusian, in other words, if you're a Libran or Taurus, or you have planets in either of those signs, or your rising sign, or your midheaven, you're very connected to Venus. And therefore, Venus disappearing, you might feel that you have disappeared, that you're not being appreciated. And Venus and the Sun conjunction in somebody's birth chart can often say that. They really need to be seen. And this makes sense of why Venus is invisible. So she's preparing, call her she, to be reborn anew. So these dates again, disappeared April 30th, beginning of Taurus, to join the Sun June 6th, and then July the 13th, she will once more become visible at 2 degrees of Leo. That's exactly the degree we talked about earlier, last year. And at that time, the Sun will be 22 degrees of Cancer, so 10 degrees apart. Then on August the 4th this year, it will be the first gate, and that's when Venus will join the Moon, and that will be at 28 degrees of Leo. It's actually at 5:12 a.m., which is summertime, for those of you who'd like to know all the details. And this is the gate of manifestation, the root chakra, as she regains her royal robe. Again, I'll explain all that in a moment. Get to see what those gates signify. So Venus retrograde cycle, I know we're not in it now, but it's important to know it, but it will join the Sun just 5 signs in your lifetime. That's quite interesting. So there's only 5 signs out of the 12 where that will occur. So the average cycle of 72 years, so from 1966 to 2014, these are the signs: Aries, Scorpio, Gemini, Capricorn, and Leo/Virgo. So they're transitions from one sign back to another as that procession of signs occurs, but they are very slow and incremental over years, and only by a couple of degrees. So in this chart, thank you, that was from Erin Sullivan, who's written a very good book about Venus, and also another one on retrogrades. So here, that's where Venus was last year, 23 degrees, not last year, yes, 27 degrees, August the 15th. There it was in Leo. Before that last retrograde, before that was in Gemini, 2012. The one before that, am I going the right way? Must be not. Now I go up. Those games. 2010, that was Scorpio. Go back, there was 2009, 6 of Aries. Then also we had in 26, Capricorn, and also in January 2014, it's also Capricorn. So these signs, and notice how they form this beautiful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-sided pentacle again. Good. So these get the intense energy of Venus for you in your chart. My next diagram is showing you the current Venus star cycle. So here's Gemini down here. So this is where Venus is now, but Venus is direct at the moment. So you can actually follow the arrows. That would have been helpful from the last diagram. Go up here. See, there's 2014 down. That's 2014, 2018, 2015, 2019. Over there, 2017, 2021. You can see, anyhow, you can see the patterns are being made. The Scorpio one interests me. I happen to be a Scorpio. And of course, October 2014, it was direct. Every time you see direct, it means Venus has disappeared for about 60 to 90 days. Okay, when it's retrograde, it only disappears for about 2 weeks. So there's a very big difference, huge difference in energy. So here's a beautiful image of Venus with the lion. And that was, I can't help but smile because it's such a beautiful looking lion. I think it's fake. I don't think it's a real one. Anyhow, it was last year that this is the cycle we're in. It's important to recognize this cycle. 18 degrees of Leo, 22nd of August, 2015. And the chart of that particular beginning of that cycle is a very strong chart, because at that time I immediately look over, there's the moon next to Jupiter in Virgo, Pluto in Capricorn, it still is, but then the Venus Sun conjunction there, that cycle is also making a very good trine to Uranus, planet of change. There's a lot of strong trines, flow of energy. Saturn is in a very good position with Mars, but not with Venus and Sun. That's a testing time. Saturn always tests us, and it's not easy when it's combined with the Sun and Venus. Interesting, that's also occurring at this Venus-Sun conjunction this week. So Moon in Virgo, but it's with Jupiter, it's also very good. So there's some good things here and some not so good things. But you might want to think, last year, around that time, how was your life? Because with everything in astrology, how does it play out in your life? What astrology is as above, so below. I can show you the map of above. You know what's happening to you below, so to speak. But also, as an astrologer, I can show you very much when things are going to change, and so nothing ever stays the same, just as well. So here we have the chart for Venus joining the Sun this week, and it's part of this configuration called the Grand Cross. It's a mutable Grand Cross. So here's Venus the Sun. Where to go first? Jupiter in Virgo, Saturn in Sagittarius, Neptune down here in Pisces. These are the 4 mutable, changeable, flexible signs of the zodiac. So they are about the change from one season to the next. So of course we're moving now to the Sun in Cancer, summer begins. So each one of these is transition. Virgo is transitioning to Libra, autumn begins, Sagittarius towards Capricorn, the winter solstice, and then finally Pisces towards the spring equinox. So they're transitions. What's being activated in your chart? Where are you being asked to change? Because something has to change. This is not stable, not fixed. And you might have noticed, more than one astrologer has, the problems that a lot of Geminis have run into recently. Johnny Depp is one, Boris Johnson, Ken Livingstone, Jeremy Corbyn, Donald Trump, George Osborne. You know, these are all people, they've all got the sun in Gemini. So they're all undergoing, to some lesser degree, or it depends how close they are, to these major planets, creating a lot of tension, resistance that comes from Saturn. Jupiter wants to expand but gets caught in detail, Virgo. Notice the Brexit issue in the UK at the moment. Facts. Are we getting facts, or do we just get opinions? One man's voice and another man or woman's voice. You know, it's really bewildering to know what is true and how to vote. One friend of mine on Facebook said, I need a law degree. I haven't got time to study a law degree. I'll just toss a coin. Yeah, and it does feel a little like that. But we can't find out. No one's giving us truth. And really, it comes down to, in the end of the day, there's no answer. There really is no answer. The only answer, I believe, is to come into your heart. So this energy has got a good, positive flow of energy of Jupiter to do with the law, to do with truth, and Pluto to do with power. Pluto is also connected up to Chiron and also Neptune. That's also very spiritual. Mars in this chart is also flowing to Chiron, so there is healing occurring. Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer. But the Mercury-Mars opposition, which is in fact coming to a head this week, is all the anger of conflicting voices and opinions. You get my point. And of course that's been witnessed very strongly in the US with the nominations for president, with the extraordinary behaviour of some of the candidates. You know what I'm talking about. So we're midway through this cycle. It's important to recognise the start of the cycle, and it's Leo. So the Leo energy, which began last year, Leo is very much the queen of heaven, female empowerment. And Leo is the birthplace of kings. It has the royal star called Regulus in Leo. And that cycle began very close to that particular star, about 26, 28 degrees of Leo. It happens to be where a lot of royal people, kings and queens, that's their birthday. And Barack Obama he's a Leo. You can see that quality from him. He's very king-like and very gracious. If you've seen him actually move, he has an elegance and a leonine stroll about him. I think he's great. I really like him. Anyhow, this energy of Leo, Venus says, rethink our relationships and our values, our sense of self-worth and self-love. Leo is very much saying, blow your own trumpet. Leo is the star. It is. It's the fifth house of our chart where we are creative. It's the sign where the sun is in its own sign. So the affirmation is that our independence, and that's our true strength, is a foundation for that strength and success. And Bast, the Egyptian goddess there, is very typical of Leo, as is Inanna, Queen of Heaven. And this beautiful, beautiful painting by Susan Sedan-Boulay, who unfortunately has now died, but a lovely artist, very shamanic in this painting, I believe. So confident, independent, energetic. Leo enjoys a challenge and can accomplish a great deal. And this is for us to all recognize we have more strength and power than we realize. Gemini is a messenger. So in giving this webinar, I want to give that message to each and every one of you to go, recognize your strength, recognize your queen, each and every one of us. And that confidence brings success. And it's something that is really to be admired. And I, as a woman, I have been around a lot of men in my career who just had it. And even if it was completely unfounded, they really weren't that good at all. But they believed in themselves. And as a result, they got on in life. And it's to take a little note out of that book. You know, that's what Leo is, confident. Now here is the chart. As you can see, it's quite a complicated one. So what I'd like you to do is look at your birthday. I'll choose me as an example. I was born in 1949. So I don't go to 1950. I go back to 1948 in July. And that is 29 of Gemini. So my overtone in my life happens to be Gemini. Gemini, I've worked in journalism. I'm a writer. I'm very curious. I love, you know, the internet, of course, you know, Wikipedia. And that, you know, that appetite for information is Gemini. I'm also web designer. I enjoy all those things. So that's my particular cycle, my overtone in my life. And you can see, looking over here, is August 22nd, 2015. There we have 18 Leo. So that's where we are now. Next April, it will be 2017. It will begin Aries. So you can look back just through colours to go back and go, oh, well, you know, if I go back to me, every white one, that it's changed from Cancer to Gemini, but every white one will be that return throughout my whole life. So that's also, as I said, very, very interesting to notice that. And I appreciate you might have a problem with this because you might not know the symbols, but I'll just go through them a moment. So the white is Cancer, and then it becomes Gemini. The violet colour is Aquarius, and that's true for every single one, except it moves. You haven't got there yet. Well, it moved into Capricorn. So that Aquarius energy did change into Capricorn. When did that change? Down. Actually changed in 1982. So if you're born before 1982, you've got the purple, that's Aquarius, and it moved to Capricorn. Virgo is the pale green, and that's moved into Leo. Aries, red, has remained the same. Scorpio, blue, also has remained the same. So I said, if you have a problem at the end, I can take a question and refer back to this for you. So these gates of initiation, this beautiful picture from the Goddess Oracle cards shows the different chakras. These Venus-Moon conjunctions, after Venus is visible, correlate with those 7 gates or the 7 chakras that Inanna passes through. First of all, she descends into the underworld and is stripped. So that's interesting. That's Venus as the morning star is descending or has descended into the underworld. That began last year. So she starts off with the Queen with her crown, and of course, you know, one by one, but she's voluntarily surrendering. In the story, she gets rescued. I haven't mentioned that. She gets rescued. She said, if I'm not back to her husband and her handmaiden, if I'm not back in 3 days, send help. And he doesn't, but the handmaiden fortunately finds some little beams out of a bit of dirt under her fingernail, shaped of beams, who go into the underworld and they're not seen. And when they meet Ereshkigal, they completely empathize with her. So as she's going through her birth pangs and she's in grief and mourning and loss, they go, oh, whoa, oh, and they go, oh. So they really feel whatever she's feeling. And because of this, she's extremely grateful. And so she says, well, thank you so much. You really helped me. And of course, that's true of us all, isn't it? When we're in that place, we need someone to be there with us, not fix us, but just to be there. And so they say, oh yeah, give us that lanky old bit of meat that's hanging on the meat hook. And she does, and that's actually Inanna. So they take Inanna back through those 7 gates, and she's restored as the Queen of Heaven. The other addendum to that myth, you can't leave the underworld without sending in a replacement, and she sends the husband, who has not done anything to help her. So it's the story of the seasons of the year, another branch of that. Anyhow, we are now at the cycle. She died, she's sitting there, she's now waiting to be reborn. So these are the signs, the dates rather last year, as Venus descended, starting in September last year, the crown chakra. In October, you can see every month. You might notice, for you, those dates might mean something to you. You might very much have some story in your life where, for instance, I'll show you later, the tennis player Maria, she's just lost her crown, very much so. She's caught in a 2-year ban from a drug that she's taken, and go, wow, and that's actually in her pre-birth chart. So these different gates correlate to the 7 chakras. So the last gate, death by intent, was April the 6th this year at 1 degrees of Aries. Now, dates to come, as you can see, we've got the first gate, as I said earlier, will be on August the 4th. And then, through the months, each month, it's around the same time, isn't it? About the 3rd, 2nd. And then, of course, February is always different. It's doesn't have 30 days. So we're about to start the regaining of her royal robe, her life to come back. If I'm looking ahead, I happen to be a November birthday, and also it's interesting because that is the time of the US elections, just after that. So it's the gate 4, it's the heart chakra at the middle of Sagittarius. But again, you might want to look in your chart, does anything signify for any of those degrees, if you know your chart. If you don't know your chart, I'm offering a reduction in my normal fee if you would really like to explore this in a session with me. Be very, very pertinent and very revealing. So the Aura-Soma bottles, 16 degrees, 35 minutes. What is that message? This is Gemini after all. What's the message? Bottle 16 is here, purple. And it's called the violet, it's actually violet, the violet robe. It's very visible, violet. If you know the story of Harry Potter, he puts on that invisibility cloak, and that's the energy of this particular color combination. It's also related to the tarot, the tower. And if you know the tarot is always saying sudden, dramatic change. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you can't explain it. And that's very Uranian in astrology. But this bottle means awakening to one's true self and service. It's healing, spirituality, it's transformation. And the affirmation is, the more I realize my purpose, the brighter my life will be. And then the bottle 35 is called kindness. And notice how similar these two energies are, but bottle 35 has pink in the upper fraction. The upper fraction is conscious, so that pink is the feminine, it's the heart. It rules the heart, rules the root chakra on the awakened level, and also the crown chakra. It's unconditional love in the service of others. It's caring and healing. It's very gentle. and it's love from above. So it's soft, gentle, caring, feminine energy. You know, pink is cuddly now, I love it. And in healing others, I heal myself. So there's a lot of messages here about healing, and especially using feminine energy. In the violet or purple energy, there is blue and there is red in equal proportions. So red, root chakra, purple, crown chakra. This is a really strong message that I believe these bottles want to show us. For those of you who know more about Aura-Soma, you must get a huge amount from this information, I hope. And then this chart I'm coming to show you now is this pre-birth chart of Venus conjunct the moon. And it will show you the chakra that you connect to. And it's, as I said before, it's when the moon joins Venus before your birth. So you have that overtone, that shamanic cycle, that main one. So mine is Gemini, so it happens, right? But this is going through those months, through the whole Venus cycle, to go, what gate is that Venus moon occurring in? What is the chakra? And interesting enough, you don't need to know a time of birth to have a chart that can be analysed for this and show themes in your life. It will show something to do with your goddess archetype. It definitely show this shamanic tone. And that is a chart that responds to transits. So it could be life-changing. So if you really don't know your time of birth, I can look at this chart with you and we can explore that together. I think we might have a lot of ahas. So here, this is from Lucia Rennie, by the way, if you'd like to know more about her work, she's a fantastic woman. So the root chakra she calls the Amazon warrior. Okay, she calls the second chakra tantric lover. The third she calls the magician. That's sacral. And then the heart, the nurturing mother. Throat, healer. Oh, sorry, that's not the throat. She put thymus in there. Throat is the wise woman. And then she's going up to the third eye as an oracle. And then the spiritual leader is the crown chakra. So she's actually given us an in-between chakra. Not a bad idea. That's actually called the Ananda Canada Center in Aura-Soma. But those, I think, are rather interesting. The others, of course, are higher, much higher vibrations. So here, just a couple of charts to look at. Here's this very beautiful young woman, Samaria Sharapova. I can't pronounce her name. She's Russian, right, so forgive me. She was born 19th of April, 1987. She's 29. We don't have a time for her. She's born in Siberia, in Russia. Not an easy place to be born. However, looking at her chart, I can see here's Venus, here's the sun. So Venus will set before the sun, therefore she's a morning star person. She has Venus in Pisces, which is exalted in Pisces. She happens though to be, she's an Aries, very strong masculine sportswoman, which of course she is, if you know her. She won Wimbledon, she was only the age of 17. Highly competitive woman. She lives in the States now. But it's also square. That Venus is squaring. What's it doing? Make sure I get the right things here. It's Venus is squaring, yes it is, Uranus and Saturn. Saturn obeys the rules, Uranus doesn't. This is a big conflict in her chart. And it's unconventional, and it's difficult if you know what's going on in the world in 1987. She was born just before the breakup of the Soviet Union. And that was a life-changing event for her as a very small child. She's also got, and I don't know her time of birth, but it's somewhere there, and I presume she would have been born during the day because she's such a successful person. But the moon is with Neptune, and that can create problems with boundaries. She apparently started taking a lot of nutritional supplements because she was very weak when she won Wimbledon. So she needed to support her energy. Unfortunately, she didn't tell everybody later on what she was taking, and it's interesting. This is about boundaries, and she's got Venus in Pisces, so I don't think she maybe deliberately is lying, but I think she's not sure, you see. And also Neptune and drugs. So there's the energy in her natal chart. Now, this is her pre-birth chart. This is a time, right? 13 degrees of Libra. Here we have the South Node right on that ascendant. That is, I can tell you, as a Vedic astrologer, that's very important information. That makes her a very strange, unusual type of person. We know Libra is governed by Venus. Venus here in Aquarius. This is making her even more unconventional. And of course, she is unconventional with her peer group. She's this tennis player. She travels the world. She lives in the States. She's different. She's not your average girl, young woman. That's also with Mercury, but it's also making exact right angle virtually to Mars. Mars in Taurus. Mars is the ruler for Aries, all of you Aries out there. Mars is your planet. Mars is retrograde at the moment. She happens to also, this pre-birth chart, she has the Sun next to Jupiter. That inflates the ego. That is, I'm the king. I'm the king of the gods, Jupiter, and I'm the best. Muhammad Ali was exactly that energy, I'm the champ. So she is a champion. She has got this crown, but that is at a right angle to Neptune. So this is the issue with her that's going on now. Does she think she's above the law, or I think actually she hasn't just bothered. And Mars at the moment in the sky is opposite her natal Mars. So here's a story that is very relevant to that pre-birth chart, even more relevant perhaps than a birth chart, and we don't know the time of day. Mars is also governs her house of competitors, and that would also be, the people who at the moment have been judging her, and they've been judging her apparently very harshly. I've just read a report on the internet before this webinar, and it's actually quite complicated. So I think she will appeal. I wish her luck. I wish any woman who's successful. Now, the other woman, of course, in the news is Hillary Clinton. She's just been endorsed by Barack Obama, which is obviously a very good sign for her. Now, we don't know her time of birth. We do know she's a Scorpio. We do know she's an evening star person. So Venus in her chart, even if you don't know your time of birth, Venus won't change, is with Chiron. And of course, in her life, she's very known for the problems that she's had with her husband in relationships. But Venus is also very close to Mercury and the South Node, some strong stellium in Scorpio. She, I don't know if I mentioned it, but both her and Maria, they both have the shamanic tone in Scorpio, which in itself is interesting because the whole process of Venus going into the underworld is a scorpionic process, full stop. Because she has Venus next to Mercury, and Mercury is at a right angle to this very difficult stellium that many people do have who were born in 1947. After the war, Pluto and Saturn together are like ground zero. Mars, it's the men in her life have very much had a problem. Shall we just put it like that, for her. So that's, you can see the toughness and difficulties, first of all, even without, we don't know the chart, time of birth. Moon's in Pisces, she's actually a very sensitive person. Scorpio, she wants to keep everything private. And I read that people don't really know who she is. her birth, pre-birth chart, now we have a time, because the moon joining Venus occurs at a certain time of the day, because the moon moves very fast. So this is it. Notice huge amounts of planets in Scorpio. She has them at birth, but even more intense here, 5 planets. She's governed by the moon, Cancer rising. The Venus is, like it's in birth, in Scorpio again. It's only just visible, however, and she's a Libra in this chart. The sun's in Libra. Venus, when she was born, pre-birth rather, hadn't reached the first gate. In other words, it's still in the underworld, even though it's visible, but it hasn't started off that process of regaining power. And that's exactly where Venus is now. It's interesting because she's running what's happening now is very similar to this pre-birth chart. Notice for those of you, I said, the theme will be Sagittarius in November. So it will be in her 6th house to do with work and job at that time. It's also opposite Uranus. So if she does get elected, of course, it's a big shock and change for the US. But I feel, for her that, she really likes to be in the underworld. It is her realm. Politics is very Scorpionic, isn't it? Everything is behind the scenes. We don't really know what's going on. Right, next slide. This is moving into what Venus is about. So the name of the rose. The rose is also a secret symbol. And this is fascinating. Sub rosa literally means under the rose. And it comes from the Latin, in secret. So in the Middle Ages, rose above a doorway indicated a private meeting. And in religious symbolism, sub rosa is synonymous with confession. The rose is very, very much Venus's flower. I've noticed a lot of roses in the shops at this time. Unfortunately, they don't smell at all. I think a rose is important. It needs to smell beautiful. But it is Venus, and it is, of course, beauty. So these sacred symbols of the pentagram and the rose, and this is the sacred aspect. I mentioned earlier, the sacred marriage, and this is the sacred aspect of Venus. And this cycle is seen in the points of the pentagram. It's seen in the petals of the rose. And the pentagram has a strong connection with magic. It's often misrepresented and abused, but it is an ancient, mystical symbol. And this is quite a fun little thing. Notice you can actually draw a 5-pointed star without lifting your pen off the paper. And this reflects the unifying and harmonizing capacity of Venus. So with my little mouse here, I go up. Oops, I moved it. I'd go up and down and across and down again. You might like to try that. And when we're doing that, we're connected to our heart energy. That's why handwriting things is very important. It's fine to use a computer, but in the old days, I'm dating myself, but we always used to write letters to each other. And there was something rather lovely, of course, about receiving that letter. That person taking time to write, to post it and put it in an envelope, to post it, everything to do with that. It's very heartfelt. And a letter can convey so much more than a text or an email, because it's got that quality of the heart energy in it. So this is a little ritual that you might like to use. And it's about commitment. Now, I haven't gone into that chart of the Grand Cross in great depth, But Saturn is a planet of commitment, and Venus is making this strong aspect to Saturn's energy. So apparently ancient Greeks, when they offered a deep, solemn vow, they would press their hands against the earth as they made their pledge. Gemini does govern hands. Okay, it is our lungs and also our arms and hands, dexterous, magician. Interesting, if you know Britain's Got Talent, the magician won this year. And why he won, that man won, wasn't just his magic tricks. He came from his heart, and he put on a performance. For those of you who watched it, I was crying. It was beautiful. Yeah, he raised the bar, and it was, he got in touch with a soldier who was a magician, who is the oldest living magician of the magician's magic circle. And he'd been imprisoned in Japanese war camps, and he'd used his magic to entertain. And it was just fantastic how he had brought this man onto the stage and acknowledged him, of course. It was very touching. So the hand, magician, dexterity, this is all our Gemini qualities that we all have. To be able to use hands for healing, and that just needs it sometimes just to be a touch. Doesn't have to be hands-on healing. But to me, that if to press your hand against the earth to make that vow, this is a very good time to do that, because obviously it's not cold. It's easy enough to go outside and do that. And that might be a ritual that you'd like to do on one of those dates that I gave you. So let me just look at those dates, because I have them in front of me. So you might like to do that, for instance, on July the 13th. That's when Venus rises. Okay, so you might like that very, very much to think of that. And it is, it's Monday. It's a moon day. Monday is a moon day. So that number 5 and the 8-year pattern is embedded in nature. It's the number 5, the number of humanity, our head, through limbs in our head is 5. Everything about 5 is quite beautiful. So in the tarot, Gemini is the lovers, the masculine, the feminine, duality. And this, I'm ending on this affirmation from Tadman's book called The Elements of the Tarot. You can just about get a few copies. It's a bit out of print. It's a very good book on tarot. And his affirmation for Gemini: I love both the feminine and the masculine parts of myself. And I wish to share my integration with others by demonstrating how accepting I can be. Our duality, the left side, the right side, joining, a very simple exercise for integration. Some of you might know this already, but any problem you have, any dilemma you have, you can put one aspect in one hand, one in the other. You could interview them if you like, but the whole idea is to let them come together, to join them. And one, in Medina, I like to use colour. So if I have Saturn in one hand, Saturn's my problem, I say I put it in the right hand, it's heavy, how heavy or light is it? The colour would be black for me. What does it sound like? It's very low, it's grinding, all like that sound. And then if I put this Venus, Moon, Sun, this beautiful Sun, Venus, let's put Gemini on the other hand, and what does that feel like? It feels light. It's a butterfly. It's quite vibrant. And it wants to communicate. So all I would then do is raise my hands and bring them together, integrate them, and then cross over my hands, cross my fingers, and then feel their combined energy. And what does that feel? My energy, I go, oh, it would be some sort of butterfly energy, but like a statue, something that has that extraordinary lightness about it, and yet it's solid as well. And there are quite some amazing artistic endeavours. I think in one I saw on the internet the other day, which had that kind of quality. I hope that's helped in a little demonstration. I'm aware of the time. So this will be Venus rising once more. And it's important, I really mean this, I really, I'm an astrologer, but to look up and see the stars, see the planets. And now, iPhones, they tell you what the stars are. You can be the amateur astronomer, but know that Venus is about love, Venus is about beauty, Venus wants to endorse us, so we all have these gifts. We are meant to shine, each and every one of us. And this evening star phase is that return back to heaven, which I think is, you think about that. Venus descended as a morning star. It's interesting. Now it's ascending as the evening star. And her cycle is Leo. Her cycle is the Queen archetype. But now I believe it's about us expressing and communicating, each and every one of us, that archetype into the world and to give the world our creative vision. It's all it needs. So here I am at the end, Pam. So if you want to know more about this in your personal chart, your Venus Moon chart, I'm making a special offer for June, only for June. And instead of £95, which I charge, I'm charging it only 70 for those of you who are interested. Now, it doesn't have to focus entirely on that. Of course, I always take into account whatever is going on for you. But this, I think, adds something special that you might not have ever known about in your entire life. And it's those two examples. I've done more. I've done Margaret Thatcher, for instance. Her fall from grace occurred when Venus was in the underworld. Exactly that. If you remember when she got booted out, everyone ganged up against her. It was quite a sad ending for her. I looked at Anne Boleyn, who don't even know a birth date for Anne Boleyn, but I could see from her rise to fame and then her fall, I could track that through those Venus-Moon conjunctions. It's quite fascinating. So my offer, of course, £70 instead of 95, and all you need to do is email me, pam@healingstars.com, and say you're interested. And I've got quite a few spaces at the moment, but the month is getting busy. So that's the end of the formal presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing from you.